Welcome to Fully Booked, the bookish podcast where I'll chat about all things book and reading related. Whether you're new or a pro reader, there's something for everyone to learn. I'm here to help you on your reading journey and find that next great read that will keep you fully booked. Hello readers, Happy New Year! Welcome back to Fully Booked and it's the first episode of 2026. I can't believe it's actually the new year and we're about to dive into another whole year of Fully Booked. Today's episode is especially exciting because not only are we going to do my 2025 reading wrap up, we are going to be doing the first ever Fully Booked awards. And this is going to be really fun because I think last year I did something along the lines of my top 10 reads. I would have to go back and check. I really can't remember right now. But yeah, I decided to do an awards style for my reading wrap up this year because I just think it's the most fun to get to kind of put your own creativity on it and to get to talk about all these different favorite books that I read over the past year. Also, super quick disclaimer before we start. I know that my background probably looks very different, and yes, we have moved furniture around. We also did get a new couch, and I was kind of hoping to have a little bit more aesthetic background, but it's just a lot more comfortable for me to sit at the desk in a chair because I did think about filming in front of my bookshelves because my bookshelves are kind of in a better spot for me to film now than they were before, but it just gets really uncomfortable sitting on the floor, and I know this is going to be a long episode, so here we are. Also, before we actually dive into the awards, I thought it'd be fun to go through my 2025 Fable reading wrap with you guys. Obviously, Fable's a bit newer, so they only started doing this year, I believe, and obviously it's similar to the Spotify Wrapped. I did consider going through my Goodreads, what year of reading with you guys as well, but I just think the Fable one looks so much more cuter and aesthetic from when I've been seeing other people go through the Fable Wrapped, and I've been trying to save going through it for this episode because they did release this, I think at the start of December, but I knew I was going to read a few more books before the year ended, and that might affect my stats that it shows. So I'm saving it for this time. So we're going to go through that now. Okay, so opening my Fable Wrap right now. Oh, even the little cover is so cute. I love it. Oh, I love this page too, from the library of Natalie Lim. Let's look back at this year's journey and the stories you explored. Also, by the way, I'm going to try to read it word for word for those of you who are only listening to audio so you know exactly what I'm seeing. Okay, this year you read 113 books, reaching 113% of your goal. Oh, there you go. You exceeded your goal of 100 books by 13 extra books. It actually might be 14 because December's technically not over yet when I'm filming this. This year you read for 344 days, top 0.1% of all Fable readers. I actually think that's pretty good. On average, you finish each book in 8 days. Yeah, that sounds about right knowing me. Your longest streak was 89 days. This is actually so sad because I think I got to like almost 100 days at one point, but I just had a couple days here and there where I just didn't pick up a book at all. Or I think even or maybe if I did read, I forgot to mark it, so hence why I lost my streak, unfortunately. You're in the top 5% of romance readers on Fable. Again, not surprising for me if you guys know me as well. Oh, your most popular pick, Fourth Wing. Wow, 1,040,447 other Fable readers listed this book. Ooh, hottest take. Ooh, average Fable community rating for 28 Summers was 4 stars, and I only gave this 2.5 stars. Now let's close your story with 3 books that made this year special. Oh, right. I forgot. Sorry, they ask you. Oh, this is hard. Wait. Best book of the year? I know which one I'm choosing. Actually, Rip, I don't know if I'll show this section because it's kind of going to give away some of the books that I'm literally about to talk about in today's episode. Ooh, most criminally underrated. I probably have a couple I could choose for this one, but I think I know which one I want to choose as well. Ooh, most beautiful cover. I'm not really one that, I tend to obsess over covers unless it's absolutely stunning. Oh, wait. I remember which one I was thinking of for this before. Okay, I know now. Okay, so to wrap it all up, and I might have to blur some of this part out again because I think I might talk about some of these books in a little bit. But yeah, again, 113 books read. There you go. That's my Fable 25 wrap. That was so fun to go through, and I'm so happy I saved it to go through with you guys. Definitely, if any of you have Fable, you should go through this as well if you haven't yet. I think it's a lot more fun than the Goodreads one. Now let's get started on next year's story. Set your 2026 reading goal. Actually, this episode's already been out, so I can tell you guys. I am going to be setting mine to 52. We're trying a little bit of a different approach this year, and let's see how this goes. Okay, set. Your journey to 52 books begins. See you next year. But with that, let's get into my actual 2025 reading wrap up and my fully booked awards. Also, I want to give quick apologies for any background noise that's being picked up because the construction that they are doing outside is quite atrocious, especially since I'm now sitting by the window. So if you're getting any of that, I do apologize today. So I do have 13 different books or awards that I'm going to go through today. I was trying to keep it to an even number originally, but I couldn't help myself, and this is what we ended up with. So the first award that I'm actually going to start with is for the most surprising book that I read. Also, if I'm glancing off the side, it's because I have my monitors set up and all the books are written down there. This one, I think, wasn't that hard to think about because there's one book that stood out so much in my mind, and it's crazy because I think I read this book back in end of January, February, as did everybody else, and that is The Favorites by Lane Fargo. It's interesting because I actually didn't rate this book that highly. I only ended up giving it a 3.75 stars. There were some problems with the plot near the end of the book that I had a little bit of trouble with, which is why I didn't give this book 4 stars. Even despite that, this book still stands out very vividly in my mind. I feel like there's so many different elements going on in this book that make it fun, exciting. You kind of hate the characters sometimes, but maybe you love them too at the same time, kind of thing. And if I were to describe this book without actually describing the plot, this book is basically if you took Magnolia Parks, Carrie Soto, and Daisy Jones the Sixth, and they had a throuple baby, and that would be The Favorites. And the reason it's those three is because you have a sports element in this one, like Carrie Soto, but instead of tennis, we have ice dance. And then it's also like Daisy Jones the Sixth because part of the book is written in this interview format. I actually realized that's one reason I regret not picking up the audiobook for this one. But if I had taken more time, this book, I think I would go back and audiobook it because I feel like the interview transcripts, especially they have different voices for the characters, would have been really fun to listen to because that made Daisy Jones the Sixth such a great read, were like the interview parts. And then, of course, Magnolia Parks is for the romance subplot. I would say this in this book. Actually, I don't know if it's a subplot, but I would say for me, the romance wasn't the star of this book. It does play a big element since a lot of the story is centered around our FMC and MMC, but a lot of the book is also centered on them being ice dancers and the competitiveness of that. But yeah, it is a lot like Magnolia Parks in the sense that there is a romance between our two main characters, but it's not very romantic, like the way that she writes it and then the overall dynamics and nature of their relationship. And side note, I didn't realize until maybe actually a couple weeks ago when I think I was listening to one of Bestie Jamie's videos. I did not realize that this book is actually also supposed to be a Wuthering Heights retelling, or at least that is what I've heard through some other people, which does totally make sense because if you guys don't know, the main characters in The Favorites are named Katarina, or I think Kat, she goes by for short, and then Heath. And in Wuthering Heights, their names are literally, I think, Catherine and Heathcliff. So I'm pretty sure it is supposed to be a very loose retelling. I just had no idea when I read the book at the time. I think this book was just so surprising because I didn't expect it to be so TJR coded when I read it. The way it's written is slightly like lit fic at times throughout the book, even though there's also still a lot of drama going on in the plot. But yeah, if you like any of those things and you haven't picked up The Favorites yet, then definitely try to do that in 2026. And the next award I'm going to go through is for the saddest book that I read of the year. And actually from here on, I'm going to start doing the honorable mentions before I talk about the book them giving the award to. So for this one, I actually wrote down 2 because I remember crying a bunch of tears for both of these books. And for me, those were In 5 Years and The Great Alone. I think I would say The Great Alone I cried a bit more because you guys know, like any Kristen Hanna book is going to make me cry. As for many other people, I'm sure. She just always throws so many elements in that are so heartbreaking, and it just connects you even more to the characters. Having said that, I am gonna award this one to Beartown. If you've read Beartown already, then you know what happens in this book, the tragedy that happens in this book, and how it affects like all the characters' lives. Not even just the very people that were involved in this tragedy. I obviously can't say that much if you guys haven't read it yet. The timing of this is actually interesting because I guess, spoiler, I'm actually currently reading Us Against You as I'm filming this right now. And so far, I haven't cried as much as Beartown. There is a bit of a different feel so far to Us Against You. Like, even though some parts have been sad, it's just not as sad as Beartown. I don't know if it's because it was the first Friedrich Bachmann book that I read and it just had so much impact on me, but I feel like I just cried so much when I read this book, especially in the second half of this book. Like, the tears just kept coming, and I'm gonna be honest, there was another book of his that I considered giving this award to, but the tone and overall feel of that book didn't feel as, like, heart-wrenching, and it felt a little more, I guess, optimistic, so to say, and I think you guys will understand why when we get to that book and award. So yeah, that is the reason that Beartown was still the saddest book that I read. I think with Friedrich Bachmann, his books also have so much heart and quirk to them that I think you should give him a chance. Like, even though you're gonna cry, like, you're just gonna fall in love with the world and the characters in his books as well. Actually, whether you try the Beartown series or you try one of his standalones, like, you are just gonna love it. Now, this next award is going to be for the most magical book. This one is also interesting because I think I changed my answer for this one about a month ago, because I did remember one book in particular that I read in the fall time that really stood out to me for this award. And I think the reason this book came to mind was because I think this award is probably the one where it was based most on how I felt while I read it, and was it able to transport me to, like, another place or world. And for me, that book was The Night Circus. If you guys remember, though, from my October reading wrap-up, again, I actually didn't enjoy this book that much, and I think the reason was that while this book was very magical, very whimsical, it also made the book very abstract plot-wise. Like, I'm gonna be honest, I didn't really understand what was going on in this book more than half the time, especially because if you read the book descriptions online for The Night Circus, it mentions that our main characters are in this magician's competition, and they have to go through different stages or, like, trials of the competition. And if you ask me, I don't remember a single trial or part of the competition happening in this book. Like, I honestly have no idea, and I was very confused when I got to the end of this book and what was actually happening, and I guess the mechanics or the explanation behind the ending. Like, I honestly had to look up what happened after I finished this book. Despite that, this book overall, again, did feel very magical. It was just whimsical, ethereal. It definitely transported me to another place in time. I guess literally too, because we are set in the 1800s at the start of this book, and then we move through a couple decades of time as the story goes on. If you're okay going more based on feeling, and you really like magical books, elements, settings, and you don't care as much about the plot, then I guess this would be for you. Actually, I should have mentioned it first, but the honorable mention for this one was literally just going to be anything that I read by Rebecca Ross, which was actually a lot this year, because I think with reading the Letters of Enchantment, The Elements of Cadence, and reading Wild Reverence, I read 5 books by Rebecca Ross this year. So that's a lot. And every single one of those books felt magical, even though we were set in slightly different worlds. Ooh, this next one's going to be interesting because we have a couple points to go through, and you're going to see why. So this one is going to the best overall series that I read. And I'm going to be honest, if I had gotten better and had read a lot more fantasy this past year, I feel like I'd have some much better contenders for this award. And I think the reason I picked this series, well, actually, want to clarify one. I picked this one because I was thinking of series that I had actually completed within 2025, because I obviously do have some series that I'm still in the middle of, like Beartown. I also have a couple interconnected standalones, which I tend to treat like series, as in I read them in order. So I kind of put them under series as well, even though they're not really. So that's the reason why for this one, I chose the Magnolia Parks and Daisy Hates series or universe. I'm going to talk about the series first, and then I will address the author afterwards. So like I said, I really did enjoy the ride. And in particular, I think I really enjoyed the character study nature of this series and the journey that we go on with each of these characters. Like I mentioned when I discussed reviews and spoiler reviews of these books, I especially really enjoyed the journey that we go on with BJ, where I feel like the general consensus is that everyone hates BJ in the first Magnolia Parks book, but by the time you get to Into the Dark, you honestly fall in love with him and the growth that his character goes through, and he actually becomes a very likable person even overall. In terms of character journey, he really stands out. Obviously, you guys know I'm a bit more of a fan of the Daisy side of the universe as well, which is so sad because we're still waiting for those books. And honestly, with everything going on with Jessa Hastings as well, I'm kind of not sure now when we're gonna get the next Daisy books. And again, before I start addressing some of the controversy, I do want to finish this series, if I'm going to be honest. With everything happening, I kind of debated if I should stop reading, but I can't help myself. I really like the Daisy side of the universe, and the way they left The Great Undoing, I have self-control issues, and I really need to know what happens to Daisy and Christian in their story. So whenever she writes it, I'm gonna be here. To get into it a little bit, I feel like this is not the time to address the controversy in more detail, and I will admit, I am aware of the controversy around Jessa Hastings in terms of statements she's made around AI. Also, some other controversial statements that she's made. But I will confess, I'm not aware of the full extent. I actually just couldn't find resources or anything else online that could verify what people are saying about what she has said. It's actually quite sad because it's definitely has, I guess, soured my opinion of her a bit. I still think she's a very talented author. If I'm going to be completely honest, she has a certain way of writing that can really speak to certain people, and that magic is definitely there in the Magnolia Parks and Daisy Hates books. But I think thinking it over a little bit, I have decided that I think I'm going to try reading The Conditions of Will. And honestly, whether I like that book or not, I don't think I'm going to read any more books by her besides, again, the Daisy Hates books. Actually, you guys probably won't remember that much because I did DNF Time of Your Life earlier in the year. Yeah, I feel good, I think, about that decision because I don't want to spoil your opinion, what you think about her, and if you really enjoy her as an author, then that's fine overall. But I guess maybe hot take, I think Magnolia Parks and the Daisy Hates series was kind of her magnum opus. And I'm just really getting the sense that I'm just not going to get those same feelings from any of her other books as I have gotten from the Magnolia Parks and Daisy Hates books. So I think my journey with Jessa Hastings will be coming to a close soon. Yeah, I think with all this stuff coming out and kind of revealing her true nature of character, I think for a lot of reasons, she's not really for me anymore. Again, if you still enjoy her books, and you're going to continue on, then actually good for you. And maybe I'd be curious to hear what you guys think if any of you have read all of her books. That is where I'm leaving things with her. I probably could address this again in another episode or video when I've had more time to do, again, a little more research. But that is what I'm going to say for now. Also, really quick reminder that if you want to hear me talk more on certain books, but in particular Magnolia Parks and Daisy Hates, I do have spoiler reviews still up on my Buy Me a Coffee page if you want to go over there, and that's just another way to support Fully Booked as well. Okay, moving on to some more fun topics. So the next one that I have is for the Scariest book, and this one was pretty easy because, as you guys know, I don't really read true horror or crime or any books that are more scarier. I only really read mystery thrillers and psychological ones, so that's really what I had to pick from. So for me, the Scariest book was the only one left, and this is so fun to talk about because out of all the Riley Sager books I've read, I would say this one is my top pick of his. It is my favorite, and I still have I think 2 more on his backlist that I need to read. Plus, he's coming out with a new release next year as well. But I think there were so many elements that were just well done and well written in this one. Not that his other books are not well written, but this one, because there were so many different physical and psychological elements that play with the reader's mind, and that, he was just able to play around with as an author. I thought that just made this book so much more interesting and also scary. I think in particular, the setting descriptions really creeped me out in this book. They were so eerie, the house overall, but even just describing how the house was set on this tilted like cliff and landscape, it creeped me out every time I read about it. I don't know if it's because I'm a very paranoid person in general or what it was about these descriptions, but yeah, it really got me, that's for sure. Also, because there's so many unique elements going on, and with the flashbacks that happen in this book, actually, it could be any of his books because I think all of his books use flashbacks or dual timeline, but I feel like this could be such a good TV show. And I say TV show because I think TV shows work better for dual timelines or flashbacks. A movie could work, but it's definitely a thing where they could devote episodes to like each of the different timelines, or even just a flashback throughout the episode would make for a very cool and interesting TV show. I do know there are some people, like my parents, who do prefer chronological order maybe a bit more. And I admit, chronological order works better for me in certain genres, but I think it works fairly well in the mystery thriller genre. It keeps things exciting, keeps up the pacing throughout the story, and so yeah, I think that could work really well for a TV show. I feel like there's so many cool things they could do too, like the set, the design. I feel like this could just be such a great TV show, and they should really consider picking it up. Ooh, we have another fun one. This one's going to be for the funniest book that I read. My honorable mention for this one is going to be Taste by Stanley Tucci. Oh, and to clarify, for funny, I was really thinking laugh out loud funny, and laugh out loud is in I was laughing throughout a majority of the book. So yeah, Taste was one of those books that did make me laugh. I think it's because I listened to this book all on audio, and Stanley Tucci himself narrates, and the way he's able to tell anecdotes, just his vocal intonation, just makes you laugh a lot. So definitely audiobook this one if you're going to read it. Also, I am such a food lover. I love reading stories about food and people who enjoy food, or yeah, celebrity chef memoirs. I feel like that's kind of my niche as a reader in terms of what I enjoy and what I enjoy within the memoir genre specifically. And so if you're a reader who also loves food or reading about food in those descriptions, then definitely try Taste. Having said that, I am giving this award to Beyond the Wand, which is Tom Felton's memoir, and a lot of it details his life having played Draco in Harry Potter, but then also life before and after the movies were made, and just, yeah, how all of those different things, being like a child star, affected him and whatnot. But there are so many stories and anecdotes that he told that were honestly just so funny. They're also funny different ways. Like, some of them were definitely laugh out loud funny. There was one particular story where he got spotted and mistaken for a different actor that made me laugh the most. I still remember that one. But even just, there were stories that were funny because, like, I didn't know that. And it's just so cool to learn as someone who's still a bit of a Potterhead, I guess. For example, I will tell this one. There's one story where he was mentioning basically, as a minor, a child actor, you have to have an adult accompany you to the set. I don't know if they have to stay there, but yeah, you have to have an adult take you there, basically. And so in the early days and films for Harry Potter, he would have his grandfather accompany him to set, and his grandfather had like a certain look about him. Like, he literally looks basically like Dumbledore. But he basically got approached by someone and asked if he wanted to be an extra in the film, and he said sure. So I think if you watch the Sorting Hat and Feast scene in Philosopher's Stone, he is in that scene. This is also another one that I would highly recommend the audiobook, because I think, yeah, I listened to this one as well, all on audio. And of course, Tom Felton narrates. He actually has a very animated way of like talking and retelling, these different stories of his life. And so, yeah, highly recommend. I actually don't think the ebook or a physical copy would even be that good unless you really want to see pictures, because I think there are some photographs from like on set and like stuff like that if you have the ebook or a physical copy. So that's one pro, but otherwise, I would pretty much recommend that you do this book on audio if you are going to pick it up. Okay, this one's probably going to be the least fun award and book to talk about, because this is going to be for the worst overall book that I read. And for me, there were two major contenders for this one that stand out, which is crazy because I read both of them fairly early on in the year. Actually, yeah, especially the first book that I'm going to talk about for our honorable mention, which is going to be The Crash, which was Freida McFadden's first release of 2025. While that book was fairly bad in terms of I mean, overall, of course, but really the plot. I am going to give this award to The Let Them Fury, which is Mel Robbins' highly talked about book. It's everywhere. You probably recognize that green cover. It's so hard for me to talk about, I think, the worst books that I've read, because if you really enjoy these books, like, no hate, these books were not enjoyable for me. And The Let Them Fury was just not, again, just was not good for me overall. I feel like maybe the first 3 chapters, I want to say, of the book I actually did enjoy. I picked out a couple pieces of, wisdom and things to take away. But after those first couple chapters, every chapter basically just felt like she was repeating the same thing from the start of the book, but just telling it through a different situation or anecdote, which they were interesting, but I just don't like reading a book that I feel like I'm reading the same chapter over and over again. And I forget how long the audiobook was. I think the audiobook wasn't even that long, but when it's 5 hours of a book where you're just reading the same chapter, it's kind of not enjoyable after a bit. And I think that's really just the biggest criticism I have and why I didn't enjoy this book. It's actually not that bad of a book, I guess. And again, if you're really into the self-help genre, I think you are going to enjoy this book. I just felt like this could have been summarized in like a 5 or 10 minute at most video. It's actually kind of crazy because I think the original podcast episode, because if you guys don't know, Mel Robbins is like a well-known speaker. She has her own podcast. I think even the episode itself was like 50 minutes. It was like almost an hour. And even that episode, again, could have been cut down by like more than half, which is crazy. And I know a lot of people probably like her. I also do like her. I definitely think she does say some things on her podcast, from what I've watched, that are insightful, are helpful. There are also things that I've just learned on my own or from other people, though, personally. Again, not good. I gave it 2.75 stars. That was probably being a little bit generous looking at that now as well. To not waste your guys' time, I would personally recommend that maybe you just watch the podcast episode on like 2 times speed or something if you can, or better yet, if there's some sort of spark notes, something summary out there of this book, then I would just recommend you go do that and save yourself the time. And definitely, yeah, don't bother getting the audiobook for this one. I just don't think it was really worth it. This next award is going to be for the most romantic book that I read, which is so fun because obviously I still read a lot of romance in 2025, so I had my pick there. But I did pick up a few romantices, as you guys know. And it's interesting because I ended up picking a romantasy book, but my honorable mention is going to be a romance book. And that was Yours Truly by Abby Jimenez. It was high time that I read this. Everyone raves about this book. It's their favorite Abby Jimenez book. And I'm pretty sure it's also become mine as well, besides Just for the Summer. I think the reason that I ended up picking this one, despite the many romance books that I read this past year, was because I just really understood the physical and emotional connection between our main characters. Because I feel like so many of the romance books it's picking up, whether they were new releases or, yeah, just new to me, I just didn't understand the connection that our characters are having. And you guys can tell, you guys probably know, I crave the emotional connection when I'm reading a romance. I'm not a spicy romance reader. That's not really what I'm looking for in my romance books. And so when I can't see or understand the connection that our characters are having, it makes the book a little less enjoyable and believable for me. Like, I just want some like tension, just want to see and understand that desire between them. And so, yeah, that's why I chose Yours Truly. I just truly could not see Brianna and Jacob not ending up with each other. Also, of course, the anxiety representation was another added element that just made the book even better for me. But again, I did end up choosing a romantasy book, or I should say duology, and it's crazy. I've read this back in January and February, and I still think about it to today. And those were Divine Rivals and Ruthless Vows, otherwise known as the Letters of Enchantment duology by Rebecca Ross. It's actually so crazy that I still think about these books, and as you guys know, I have bad memory. I probably could not tell you much of the plot and even like what happens in the world in these books, but I think about Iris and Roman. I don't think I'd say every day, but I think about them a lot. One of the main reasons that I feel like I think about these two main characters and their romance all the time is because of the letter writing element in this book and the way we see them use words of affirmation to each other, and not just in like establishing their romantic connection, but even just the way that they care about each other as individuals and as humans, and they actually do care to see the other person succeed, to be happy in like each of their own lives. I think I just love that so much. And then the way, yeah, they were able to express themselves when they were writing those letters. I don't think I mentioned it actually at the time when I reviewed these books, but we kind of have a you've got mail trope going on in this book, which I really, really enjoyed. No other Rebecca Ross book is going to live up to the way these ones made me feel. While I did enjoy the plot and the world of Wild Reverence so much, like I just got such intense, such, again, joyful and magical feelings when I read these books. Maybe it's because it was my introduction to Rebecca Ross as well. I don't know. You guys already know I love her writing style. Yeah, I could probably go on too much about these two books. If I were to recommend any Rebecca Ross books to anyone, I probably would recommend this duology. I think it's the most fun. The way it's written, it's a little bit more accessible to most readers too. I think like you have to get used to the way she writes, her lyrical like style of writing before maybe you try diving into her other books. But yeah, I think this one just has enough going on to like intrigue any reader who might be starting out with her books. These next two awards are going to be kind of more general because they're going to be author-based awards. So the first one I'm going to do is, I guess, favorite overall author. And this is crazy because, of course, I have all of my favorite romance authors, but there was one in particular that stood out to me when I think of 2025. And so my honorable mentions for this one are going to be Annabelle Monaghan and Abby Jimenez. I'm going to be honest, I originally put down Annabelle Monaghan for this award, but the reason I ended up changing my answer was because I feel like I really fell in love with Annabelle Monaghan last year, and I think if I'd done this awards last year, that would have been my answer, because I read a majority of Annabelle Monaghan's books last year, but I think 2024 still really solidified and that I was a fan of Annabelle Monaghan and not this year, which is why I didn't end up choosing her. And so the author that I did choose for 2025 is actually Ashley Poston, which is interesting because you guys probably know I've read Ashley Poston books in the past, but I think this year was a year that really solidified that I loved Ashley Poston and that she was going to be like an auto read author. I feel like I really enjoyed the 7 Year Slip. I actually didn't like a novel love story as much, if I'm going to be honest, but maybe if I reread it again, I might change my mind a little. But I think having read her newest release, which I do have my copy, Sounds Like Love, this book for some reason really solidified her as an author for me. And it's funny because I actually didn't love the romance in this one. And like I think I mentioned when I reviewed this book, one thing about Ashley Poston is that the pacing of the plot is always a little bit off for me in her books. Like sometimes we're kind of, I don't know, slowing down when I feel like things should be like happening or resolving. So that is one thing, but just the way Ashley Poston writes her characters, how they think and feel, and things that they are going through in their life just stands out to me so much. And I think because of, again, the point where I am in my life just really stood out to me, and the way the FMC was describing her feelings and parts of this book just spoke into the very core of me. I think you would only feel that if you were also going through something very similar. Ashley Poston always puts like a certain element in each of her books. Actually, so for example, 7 Year Slip was food, a novel love story was books, and this one was definitely for the music lover, you can tell, and I did enjoy that. But again, the writing and the characters and the character arcs in her book, I just really enjoy. I also really enjoy The Dead Romantics quite a bit. I can't remember. I think I rated both of these 4.5 stars, if I'm not mistaken. So obviously I really enjoyed. Yeah, this book just really did it for me and solidified her as a favorite author. Continuing along the same vein, we have favorite new author, or I guess new to me author that I only read starting in 2025. And this is crazy because I think this is potentially the year that I found the most new to me authors, or yeah, tried the most new authors. So I had a ton I could have picked from. And with that, we have a ton of honorable mentions for this one. We have more than two. So for this one, I wrote down Catherine Center, which I think I mentioned her in my major wrap-up, if I'm not mistaken. I also put Kristen Hanna, Hannah Bonham Young, Cara Stone, which is crazy because I actually only read Promise Me Sunshine, and of course, Rebecca Ross, who I literally just talked about, so that's not surprising. And I think to put it shortly, the reason that all of these authors stood out to me as honorable mentions for a favorite new author is because I just love their writing and their stories so much overall. These are all authors that write amazing characters, such wonderful overall stories. They're emotional, they're heartfelt. There are so many things they write about that I can personally relate to, but that I can see so many others relating to as well. And overall, I guess I just feel so much joy when I think about these authors and their books that I've read so far. They're definitely authors that I'm going to continue reading any books that they come out with. While I did enjoy so many new to me authors this past year, there was still not a competition, oddly enough. And I've already talked about in this episode, so you guys might know, the winner for this one is Friedrich Bachmann. By the way, I don't know if it's Frederick or Friedrich. I've heard people say different variations. Actually, if I really think about it, it's probably a little bit surprising that I didn't end up picking a romance author as well for this category. Also because a lot of the other honorable mentions that I just mentioned, besides Cara Stone, I read multiple of their books, all within 2025, which is so crazy to think about. But Friedrich Bachmann, he just has one of those kind of magical qualities as a writer. He kind of almost has that X factor, I think, as a writer, where you can't always describe exactly what it is about his books, his writing style that is so great, but they just are. There's something about them that are so universal, but also so personal at the same time. I don't know what it is about his writing too, and the way he's able to just depict humanity, but also the heartfelt and the hopeful side of humanity, that even despite tragedies and these terrible things that can come up in life, there's still a way to have hope. And he does that through all the different stories that he tells, whether, again, it's through the Beartown series or one of his standalones. He's just such an amazing writer and storyteller overall. His writing style overall is kind of hard to describe if you haven't read any of his books yet. It's very quirky and has a certain sense of humor. It's probably partly because he's Swedish as well, and I guess as North American, it's very different to me. I don't think I've talked about it too much, but if you want to get more into litfic, I think Friedrich Bachmann is actually a fairly good introduction. Again, even though his writing style is kind of not typical, it's still very palatable. And if you share some of those same quirks and humor, then you're definitely going to enjoy his books. And this next award is going to be for most likely to recommend, and this one's going to be surprising to some of you for a couple reasons, and that is The Ministry of Time by Kellyanne Bradley, which, if you remember from my May reading wrap-up, I actually did not enjoy this book a lot. I only gave it 3.75 stars, which sounds weird because you would think I would recommend a book to people that I gave at least 4 stars. But this was one of those weird books where, like I told you guys before, I did not enjoy it that much when I actually read it, but thinking back on it, it was a good book. I think maybe I might have just picked it up at the wrong time. I wasn't super in the mood for a more literary fiction novel. I think if I went back, I actually might enjoy this book a little more. And honestly, I think the reason I would recommend it to people is that there are some things in this book that were just very insightful, and the social and political commentary that we get on certain societal, even real world issues and perceptions was just nothing like I read in any other book. The time travel element is important to the story, but it also isn't the main focus at the same time. I think one reason that this book was off-putting to me at the time, and it could be to others, is that the writing is very flowery and a little bit, I don't know if pretentious is the right word, but there's definitely a lot of particular vocabulary and language choice that she made in this book, which again might not be the most fun for certain readers, but if you do enjoy a certain writing style, then you'll probably find this book very interesting if you do pick it up. I'm not gonna lie, I don't know when I would reread this book, but yeah, again, I really hope to at some point, and despite not enjoying it, I still recommend it. Okay, everyone, we're nearing the home stretch. So the second last award is going to be going to most likely to reread. And my honorable mention for this one is going to be The Perks of Being a Wallflower, because this is actually my third read round of this book. And for me, this is just a book that has always stood out to me and stood the test of time. And I know some people don't really like this book and don't like, I don't know, the writing style and the outdatedness of it and whatnot. But I don't know, for me, that's kind of what stands out. And I think it will for other people as well. It's just been one of those books that's been so interesting to go back to time and time again throughout different periods of my life, because the very first time I read this book, I think I was basically Charlie's age. I was a freshman in high school. And then second time I was in university, so like my earlier 20s. And then this third time around in my late 20s gave me even more interesting and different insights as I've gone through and experienced a lot more in life. I will say it's one of those books that I don't really feel the need to reread every year, because again, I think you get a lot more out of it if you take a bit of time in between, again, different stages of life. So I would probably wait to reread it sometime in my 30s, maybe hopefully when I have a family of my own. I have to admit, I don't read as many of them nowadays, but I think I've always had a thing for coming of age stories, whether it's a book, it's a movie. I think there's just obviously something about the teenage years. And, you know, obviously Charlie goes through some really hard things in this book, but I feel like this book also ends on, again, a bit of a hopeful note. It's not like totally depressing. I know I probably did not describe that book really well, but the point of today's wrap up is not really to go through the summaries of each of these books, but rather just describe some of my overall thoughts and feelings, and again, either why I'd recommend it or why I enjoyed it. And for me, and other people might say this too, I definitely would say this book is a modern classic. So I think it's one that I would highly recommend that anyone pick up. But for the winner, I did want to actually pick a book that I'd only read for the first time and immediately knew I was going to reread it. So for this one, I ended up picking The Storied Life of A.J. Thickery. This is one of Gabrielle Zevin's slightly earlier books, because I think it was published in 2014, if I'm not mistaken. But this one was just so amazing overall. I honestly don't know how to describe it, except that if you're a book lover of any kind, whether it's you just read a lot or you're the type that you're browsing for hours in the bookstore or the library, like this book is for you. I think this is just another one of those books where, kind of like Friedrich Bachmann's books, it's one of those heartfelt but also very hopeful stories. And it's also better than Friedrich Bachmann in the sense that it's not as like tragic. I don't think I cried or anything like that during this book, but I think it just makes you tear up in like the happy sense that you're happy to see these characters get like this second chance at life and like succeed and experience just all the good that life has to offer. Again, I just can't say enough good things about this book. It definitely made me want to read tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow. That's for sure. And again, there are just so many different elements that a reader can enjoy and relate to in this book. Whether it's, again, the bookstore and him being a bookseller, or maybe the things that AJ, actually experiences and goes through in this book, because we see him go on quite the character arc throughout this story. Again, I don't even want to say too much about the actual story and plot of this book. I feel like it's one that you can just go into and just be prepared to fall in love with these characters. And then this very last award for my 2025 wrap up, we have the best overall book. And it's funny because I literally just talked about this book, so I'm not really going to say much more, because my honorable mention for this award was The Storied Life of A.J. Thickery. And the best overall is going to go to my friends. It was one of my 5-star reads. Anytime anyone has asked me what my favorite book was this past year, I always say this one. I don't even know how much more I need to say about Friedrich Bachmann as an author, since I talked about him in the favorite new author category. But I think this book already solidified him as, again, a favorite auto read author, which is crazy because this is only the second book that I had read by him, and I was also so lucky to get the e-arc for this one back in January. So it's crazy that, again, this was another book that I read earlier on in 2025 and that I still think about to today. Again, it's another one of those stories that has an element that anyone can cling on to, whether you really like art, you're a creative individual, if you've ever felt like you don't belong and there are certain like hardships you've been through in your youth or even adulthood, and yeah, grief and loss and other things that you've had to grapple with, then this is just a story for you. It goes through all of those things and more. There's also so much about friendship and the unusual places that we can find friendship. Yeah, that's just the story. I feel like if I were to actually describe the plot, it's kind of hard to describe. Just know that there's all those different things. In this book, we have dual timeline in it between the past and present. And again, just written so wonderfully, depicts humanity so well. Again, there are some parts that were so sad in this book. Like, I think I was only like 10 or 20 pages in and I already started crying. But at the same time, this book was also really funny. Like, there were some parts that I was laughing out loud, or I think I was even crying happy tears because it was so hilarious the way Richard Walken writes. He has just the best sense of humor if you have the same sense of humor. I would personally say if you've already read A Man Called Uva by him, I think you will enjoy My Friends a lot, because I think it kind of has some of the same sort of vibe where there's some lightheartedness, there is some humor to break up the darkness and the dark theme that are in the book, which is really good. Because I personally have trouble with books that, again, are more on the depressing side, are a little bit bleak. Yes, you are going to go on a difficult journey and experience some very tragic things with the characters, but things are also going to turn around by the end of the book. And I think also just turn around like internally for the characters as well. Like, they learn so much by the time you get to the end of their story. It's really interesting because I actually was just watching his interview on Jimmy Fallon before I started filming today's episode, and it just made me appreciate him not just as an author, but also even just as a person in real life. The way he's able to express himself orally in addition to his writing was just so honest and heartfelt. And basically the way he writes, the essence of his writing is exactly the same as how he is as a real person, which I think is very refreshing to see as well. Someone who is so genuine on and off the page, and it just makes me want to meet him so much more. It actually makes me so sad that most authors do not put Toronto on their book tours, because if he came to Toronto, like 100% I would go see him. Even if I had to pay for a ticket for his event or signing, like I would be there, because it would just be so exciting and such an honor to meet someone that I now look up to so much overall. He also has a great sense of humor. Like, I feel like he was actually making Jimmy laugh so many times. The way his humor is in real life is honestly the same as, again, on the page. And that now brings my 2025 reading wrap up and our first fully booked awards to a close. I hope you guys enjoyed this reading wrap up, especially since it was a different format from last year's annual reading wrap up. And I would love to know down below in the comments or anywhere else you guys can message me what your favorite overall pick was for 2025 out of all the books you read. Let me know. I would love to hear. And of course, we are back to the regular upload schedule. There will be a new episode 2 weeks from today when you guys are watching or listening to this. But I am going to be trying to put some extra videos up as the year goes on, which is all the more reason that you should subscribe on YouTube, because again, any new episodes, new videos, all get uploaded on there. And again, it's a free way to support Fully Booked, so make sure you go and do that if you have not already. Otherwise, rate and review wherever you are listening, I guess especially if you're listening on one of the other platforms that I post on. I also have my Instagram and TikTok if you want to go follow me on one of those and keep up with me there. With all that being said, I hope you all have a wonderful day. I hope you're having a great start to 2026, and I will see you all in the next episode. Thank you for listening to today's episode. I hope you were able to take away something, and be sure to follow the podcast for more bookish content. Until next time, stay fully booked, and I'll talk to you soon.